Hello, friends. I welcome all of you in this series of Crit Talks with Dr. Anand Kulkarni, introduced on our channel Wise Words. I, Dr. Pranav Ratnaparki, working as an assistant professor at Department of English at HPT Arts and RYK Science College, Nasik, is extremely happy to host this particular talk along with my friend and colleague, Professor Ghanashyam Borate, who is working as Polytechnic College, Nasik Road. The basic purpose of this entire series is to make a kind of clarification and concept clarification as far as the subject of literary criticism and theory is concerned. Why we have chosen this subject? Because if you ask a student of literature that what is something that you face a kind of difficulty as far as your different forms are concerned, some may say it is a poetry, some may say it's a play or a drama, or some may say it's a novel. But majority of the students would definitely agree that they face a great difficulty in understanding literary criticism and theory. And luckily, interestingly, this subject is prescribed at all levels, right from undergraduates up to research. So you can't, this is in a way indispensable. You can't avoid this. So what can be done? There are so many questions that students have about this particular subject. How to begin? What kind of background reading should be there? How to apply this? Is it necessary to have literary criticism? And I think all these questions which are there in the minds of students, researchers, maybe SETNET aspirants, teachers also, and of course all those who love this particular subject, we are trying to keep all these things in forefront and try to find answers for that. And luckily, friends, we have got none other than Dr. Anand Kulkarni, who is working as head of the department as Arts, Commerce, Science College, Narayana. But more than that, he's an academician, a seasoned academician. He is a researcher par excellence. He is a writer of a great merit, and of course, a critic himself. So I think learning from Sir, understanding from Sir, of course, would be a great delight for all of us. His book on literary criticism and theory, published by Orient Black Swan, received a great kind of acclaim by the students and researchers. So I think it is a kind of talk that is going to be initiated, uh, and we are trying to, in a way, clarify certain concepts regarding criticism. So the questions are from our mind, your mind, and the answers we will try to seek from Dr. Anand Kulkarni. I welcome Dr. Anand Kulkarni on this particular series. I welcome my co-host, Professor Ghanashyam Borate, and I urge him to begin today's session.
Thank you, Pranav. Uh, the idea of literary criticism cannot be digested without first knowing what literature is. So, the first question that every student of literary criticism should raise is, what is literature? What do we really mean by literature? If we cannot define it, at least we can come up to certain concepts or ideas which will help us understand what literature is. So,
Good morning, Dr. Pranav Ratnaparki and Professor Ghanashyam Borade, and to all students and researchers and teachers and viewers. This is a wonderful initiative taken by uh, Dr. Pranav Ratnaparki and Professor Ghanashyam Borade and other his friends to know about literary criticism in particular and literature in general. Today we shall begin with what is literature, the idea of literature, and how literature has grown into what it has become today. Literature is something which we cannot define in specific terms. We cannot say this is what literature is, as we can say about a particular concept in natural sciences or in social sciences or in different areas where there are definite sets of ideas and certain issues which can define particular concepts. in case of literature, this is very difficult. This is because literature is an omnibus term, a carpet term, a term which we can use for different purposes. But at the same time, it is very important to know what it is, for the reason that without knowing what literature is, it is difficult to appreciate it. So knowing about literature is a kind of precondition to appreciate literature. So we can say that literature has two ways of knowing it. One is literature which was there in the pre-literate period. That is, it was oral literature. And then it became written literature. So we have oral literature and written literature. The reason perhaps is that earlier there was no writing. In the most ancient period, there was no writing. So those who could compose could do so orally, and there was oral transmission from generation to generation. But as writing came, literature turned into written works. If we go to the antiquity, we come to know that some 3,000 years back, the Sumerian poetry was there. After that, 2,000 years, we have Egyptian literature. All these were oral traditions, of course, of literature. And in the prehistoric period, very recently, literature turned into a written form. For example, Chinese and Indian kind of literature, which goes some centuries back to the Christ period.
Right.
Now, if we want to understand what literature is, we have to limit ourselves, and we may not be able to cover the entire landscape of literature. That is, literature is not something which is limited to Europe, limited to America, limited to the particular parts of world, Literature has been there in different parts of the world. Yeah, in different parts of the world. So there has been Asian literature, there has been Indian literature, there has been Chinese literature, and there have been so many types of literatures which have sprung in different parts of the world, in different centuries, in different periods. So applying certain norms and setting certain ideas before us would perhaps do injustice to the understanding of literature. But given the scope of our understanding, we shall confine ourselves to European literature. And European literature can be traced back to the writings of Homer, the Greek poet. So we start with Greek literature. Greek literature can be divided into, for our convenience, of course, can be divided into three groups. The pre-classical, which is said to be archaic literature. The literature when Homer wrote, the period in which Homer wrote. And then there is, of course, classical literature. And then there is Hellenistic literature. And then Roman period of literature begins. So we have pre-classical literature in which we have Homer. Though Homer's identity is suspicious, whether it was Homer who wrote it or whether there were so many Homers who wrote is doubtful, but we can take it as a starting point for our reference. And Homer wrote, we all know, the Greek epics, the famous Greek epics, and they turned out to be the cornerstones of Greek literature. From roughly around 800 to 700 BC is considered to be a period from where pre-classical literature begins. So we have Homer as a starting point for European literature. And from there on, we move towards the next, that is classical period, in which, that is somewhere between 500 BC to 300 BC. The period in which we have three very famous Greek tragedy writers, Aeschylus, Sophocles and Euripides. Chronologically, even this is true. Aeschylus comes first and Euripides comes last. So we have three of them, and of course, towards the end comes Aristophanes, who's very famous, the frog, the comedy. So we have these tragedians and comedians. We have very famous philosophers in the same period, like Plato and Aristotle. Of course, we start with Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. And we have great Greek historians like Herodotus also. So this is in fact supposed to be a very important period, because it was in this period, that is classical period of Greek literature, that literature in the literal sense of the term flourished. And poetry by this time was an established genre, established type of literature, and it flourished in different disciplines also, in different branches also, like tragedy was there, comedy was there, prose was also making its pronouncements on Greek society. The two most important things which influenced the growth of literature in Greek period, and I shall make passing references to these because we are running short of time. One is, of course, the polis. The word is spelled as P-O-L-I-S, and it is a concept of city-states, Greek society. And polis is something from which we have derived the term politics.
Right.
So not that literature was free from, poetry was free from politics. There was a strong connection between politics and poetry. As police, the city-states rose in Greek, and we know two of them being very famous, one being Sparta, other being Athens. And it was in Athens that literature flourished, poetry flourished to a very large extent. Sparta also contributed to some extent. And this police was, that is political setup of Greek of this period, was divided into two parts which literally influenced the growth of poetry and in general the growth of literature. One was that Athens was democratic, not in the modern sense of the term, it was democratic, but in the sense in which the Greeks understood, conceived democracy. And Sparta was the state of oligarchy. So there was a kind of contradiction between these two Greek city-states, and they were the rivals in a way, competing with each other and trying to establish the domination. And poetry had some role to play, because poetry was divided into two parts. One was sophistry was there, and rhetoricity was there. So rhetoric and sophistic were the two things which helped in some way or undermined in some way the growth of poetry, whichever you prefer. But in both ways, it contributed towards the growth of literature, growth of poetry. The other important factor that influenced was the Sparta invasion over Athens. Sparta invaded, attacked Athens, and then Athens was defeated. We all know Spartans ruled over the entire Greek, and this really contributed to us and adversely contributed towards the growth of poetry in a way. These were two very important factors that influenced the growth of literature, the growth of poetry, especially in the classical period, because classical period was supposed to be the apex period of the growth of poetry. And then we move towards the Hellenistic period, in which we have such poets like, such writers like Plutarch. Plutarch was important. This is towards the end of the Greek civilization, of course, and the beginning of the Roman Empire encroaching upon the Greek literature, Greek society, the entire Greek world. So this was in a way a very critical kind of period for both the Spartans and the Athenians. But then we cannot forget that this was also the period in which we have the writers of the status, the poets of the status of Ovid and Virgil, where we have epics also in the form of Aeneid that Virgil wrote, and Ovid also contributed in some way, and Sappho was also a woman writer who contributed in some way,
Right.
also towards establishing poetry as a genre, and further consolidating, of course.
Yeah.
But Hellenistic period was the period from where we shall see that there was a downfall of at least the Greek poetry, and then there was an emergence of Roman poetry, Roman literature. Then we turn towards Roman literature. Now, what do you think is the difference between the ancient literature, without going into the details and making a survey of everything,
Right.
let us understand in contradictory terms as to what was the difference, the basic difference between the ancient conception of literature and the modern conception of literature. In between, we have Middle Ages, and this Middle Ages is also a very difficult term to understand, even historically also. The reason is this, that from 2nd century onwards, we have Middle Ages, which is supposed to be a dark age in between. In fact, this dark age continues till the 12th century, as long as Beowulf was not written in English. So there were some Latinate influences, there were French influences, European influences also. There were so many things which went into the unmaking of literature, in fact. That is why they are said to be dark ages.
And so, sir, in a way, nothing happened in between those almost more than 1,000 years?
Something happened, but it was more religious.
Okay.
Theology took over poetry, theology took over literature, because we have St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas, who pushed the study of literature, the study of poetry, the composition of poetry and the understanding of poetry into the religious arena, religious field. So it was more biblical kind of thing, because Christianity made deep inroads into this. It was the end of Greek civilization, the beginning of Roman Empire, the Roman civilization. Romans were wise enough not to trample down and devastate the entire Greek civilization. There are historical records that Romans allowed Greeks to live their way as long as the Romans continued. But when church started intervening into the matters of state, things started changing, and then literature was pushed back and theology came over. And it was through the theology, that is where you have hermeneutics. That is the art or the skill of interpreting Bible. And it was through this that we later on learned how to interpret literature. So this was a kind of intervention, a religious intervention, which dominated for so many centuries the secular status of secular nature of literature. But then it was in the 12th century onwards that we find that the dark ages, we come to the Middle Ages, then the dark age is over. And then there was a resurgence of, a reappearance of literary field or poetry. And then we have Geoffrey Chaucer, and later on we have other writers as well. You can start with Dante, the Italian writers, because actually Italian writers
Renaissance.
They initiated this movement called Renaissance, and it spread like a wildfire in different parts of Europe. England was of course the last recipient as far as history is concerned. But then you have Geoffrey Chaucer, and then the rest of them, we know all that. Then we come down to the medieval period, and then the modern period. Now, it was not till the 17th century that literature achieved its status of what literature is today, not till the 17th century. And around 18th century, that is mid 18th century, that literature started acquiring its canonical status. And in the mid 19th century, that is somewhere around 1840, 30 and 40, literature acquired its canonical status.
So that is the
So
beginning of Victorian period.
Yeah, the beginning of the Victorian period.
Hmm.
And towards the end of 19th century and beginning of 20th century, literature was already an established institution. So literature that we modern people understand, people living in the modern world understand, in whatever way we understand it, is a recent phenomenon. It does not have its history that goes back to the ancient period or even in medieval period, because theology was very dominant in the understanding of literature in the medieval period, and philosophy and medicine and mathematics were the three important influences on the understanding of poetry in the ancient period, the Greek period. So if you ask me what is the major difference between the ancient period of literature, ancient understanding of literature and modern understanding of literature, I would say ancient literature was more secular, more democratic, more earthly, more pagan,
Yeah.
and even political also
Hmm.
to that extent. Whereas modern conception of literature is more cultural, more social, more historical, more moralistic, and recently more political. Another major difference is in the Greek period, that is in the ancient period, literature was not institutionalized.
Hmm.
It, it did not emerge as an institution in the sense that there was not a structure which you call it to be literature, that there were not writers in the modern sense of the term. There were not the publishing houses, there were not the distributory agencies, there were not critics who could uh, interpret the text to the readers, and there were not a wide variety of readers as well. So this structure that we have in the modern period was absent in the Greek period, because it was more of entertainment and less of education purpose. They were more interested in entertainment. It was the medieval period where, that is in the 17th and 18th century, that literature was interpreted for the sake of education. And the reason, of course, was religion, because literature was considered to be a part of religion. And of course, we know how Matthew Arnold came out with an announcement that literature should should take the role of science and start educating the masses.
Right.
So the instructive role of literature was absent, at least in the ancient period. It was more entertaining and less instructive. It was not institutionalized, it was secular, it was democratic in the limited sense, of course, democratic in the limited sense. But in the modern period, we have so many other forces that have entered into the field of literature, and now we understand literature in different ways. So if you ask me what literature is, we can say that literature, if we go by the canonical understanding of literature, if you go towards the Oxford English Dictionary definition of literature, you have two things. There is form of literature and there is aesthetics of literature. That is one part of that. These two things, that is form of literature and aesthetics of literature, and how literature can be used as a force of civilizing the people.
Right.
That is another thing that literature can be understood, So
Right.
literature as a civilizing force carrying certain message to the people, and literature having aesthetics of its own. So you can enjoy literature for the sake of its aesthetic pleasures, and you can employ literature as an agency to bring about changes that you think are necessary to bring in the society. So these two are the defining parameters, I think, the defining characteristics by which we can understand literature. Traditionally speaking, of course. By
Right.
traditionally, I mean in the canonical sense of the term.
Right.
So I hope you have some idea of what literature actually stands for or means.
Absolutely,
There were
sir.
two other things which I should mention, and perhaps we shall come to the end of the discussion of what literature means.
Right.
One is the representation, imitation and representation were the two important things. And this is not something that the modern critics have come up with. These were the Greek ideas.
Yeah.
In fact, the person who instigated these two ideas was, of course, Plato.
Later.
mimesis is the concept that came out with these two points. One is, of course, imitation, another is representation. And I think we have still not been able to answer correctly or in relatively convincing terms whether literature really imitates and whatever it imitates or not. And secondly, whether literature represents. So on one hand, there is imitation, on the other hand, there is representation. So if you ask me, again, I think these two defining terms should be introduced into the understanding of literature. So literature is form, literature is aesthetic pleasure, literature is something meant for social purposes. But again, there are two things: literature for the sake of representation, and literature is an imitation. These are, I think, the parameters against which, the standards against which we can understand literature. Literature as creativity, literature as imagination came very late. It is a Renaissance term. It is a Renaissance conception of literature. And it was by the time of Coleridge, that is the Romantic period, that creativity and imagination were the established defining terms in literature. Of course, we have Longinus in Greek.
Sublimity.
But Longinus was not emphasizing on the subjectivity of literature in so much with so much intensity and to a very larger degree that the Romantic critics did, Romantic writers did. So it is more of a romantic conception, creativity and inspiration, though inspiration was negatively used by Plato. But the Romantic writers and critics interpreted it positively. Of course, Romantics were not the first. Plotinus was the first in a way, if you talk historically, who interpreted it in a very, very positive term, that inspiration is important also. So you have creativity, imagination, inspiration, subjectivity. Also, that being the Romantic ideas, which help define literature in some way. I think by referring to these defining parameters, you can very clearly understand how it is difficult to define literature. That is it, in exact terms.
Absolutely.
This wide spectrum that literature takes us to convinces us that it is very difficult to define literature in exact terms. And so that is the beauty of literature also.
Right. So that's exactly what I wanted to say, is that the whole crux of the argument is that you can't define it. That is basically the idea. Right, sir. I think in today's session, we have probably gotten a kind of map about what exactly literature traveled from Greek, that is antiquity time, up to modern times. So friends, I think in the coming up subsequent such kind of talks, we will continue to explore different areas regarding literature. And of course, our focus is on literary criticism. Sir, thank you very much for sparing time with us, and keep watching this particular series and keep subscribing to our channel. Thank you very much.